Next photographer is Terry Talbot.
I'd like to start off by saying thank you to Daniel for inviting me to be part of this show with two really talented photographers. I feel kind of overwhelmed to be part of what they're doing, but thank you, Daniel. It's great to be here. I did drop a bunch of words that I was going to say to you, and I kept trying to recite them, and it didn't work out well, so I'm just going to talk off the top of my head. I was born in San Francisco in 1947, and 6 weeks later moved to Jacksonville, Florida with my family, and lived there for about 6 months, and it was from then on out, through my childhood, it was moving every 6 months or so. My dad was a lineman, you know, the guys climb telephone poles and string electrical line, and he followed the work. So we moved from Jacksonville to Altoona, Pennsylvania, to New York, all down the East Coast, all over the country. So I never really made friends because I was always the new kid at school until we finally moved to Chicago, and we lived in a suburb northwest of Chicago, Crystal Lake, Illinois. And I still was kind of a shy kid, so I didn't really have too many friends then. And then I came to the University of Wisconsin, and everything changed. I made a lot of friends, and I was introduced to a lot of things that really captured my imagination. And one of those things was the art films that were being shown by the Wisconsin Film Societies. And in particular, I'll give you the names. They were filmmakers that I really, really loved. They were the surrealist filmmakers. René Clair, Louis Buñuel, André Breton, Man Ray, and a number of others. They were really popular on campus here. And I just loved the work they did. I loved the symbolism they used and the sort of absurd images, and it really struck me. After my first year of college here, I dropped out to work to make some more money and unfortunately got drafted and went away for a few years. But when I came back, I enrolled in the journalism school, and I took a photojournalism course, and that's where I really got my start as a photographer. And I still trace my roots all the way right back to that, not in the art school, but in the photojournalism school, where I learned how to tell stories with the camera. And I think that's still what I do with my cameras. I tell stories. I think even in the stuff I consider, like what you're looking at now, the more fine art stuff, it's still storytelling, but it goes back to those surrealist roots from the films that I would look at when I was a freshman in college that told a different kind of story. So how I really got to start was our first class for this photojournalism course I took was to go out and take a picture of something you found interesting, and we bring it back, develop the film, make a print from it, and critique it. Well, at the time I was a musician. I had been a musician in a band after hours in the Army, and I got back to Madison. I started a group up and played here. And we started a musicians collective. So I thought about this first assignment. What did I want to take pictures of? And I thought, well, I'll take pictures of the band. That would be fun. Well, it sort of went from there. I ended up going to Whitewater. I don't know why I picked on Whitewater, but I did. I picked on them to put on a rock festival. So I put on a one-day rock festival with bands from Milwaukee and Minneapolis, Chicago, and Madison. I obviously took more than one photograph. So I took my pictures back to the class. We developed the film, we made the contact sheets, and the professor looked at me and he said, well, you're done. And I was appalled. I thought, well, there were some topless women in the photographs. I thought maybe he didn't like that or something was wrong. And I said, I'm done. He said, yeah, you've got an A in the class. And he said, don't be a writer. Don't be a writer. You should be a photographer. And I really credit Professor Fosdyke. He wasn't a fancy art photographer. He was a photojournalist. But he really set me on the journey that I've been on for the rest of my life. And I really appreciate the encouragement he gave me. And throughout my whole career, I've always found people that mentored me and encouraged me along the way. It was very important. When I brought you, just so you can see it, my project, Whitewater Fest 71. It's full of, it's a great collection of photographs. There's the guy doing the pictures on the back there. I was 24 at the time, just kind of out of the Army. So I took this photojournalism course, and within a month of learning how to print photos, I started selling photos like these. And these are the actual photos that I made in 1971, 72, 73, that I sold on Library Mall for $20 out of a little orange crate that I put legs on. That's how I got my fabulous start as an art photographer. Now, and some of these images are in the show you're going to see today out in the hallway. These were done in a little dark room that I had in a closet. And then I'd take them out and wash them in the bathroom, hang them up over the bathtub and let them dry. So it was pretty humble beginnings. It's still pretty humble, actually. By the way, what we're looking at now is another genre I got into, which was SX70 photography. I got into that in the mid-1980s, and I loved SX70s. So aside from my black and white work, I started doing pictures of my neighborhood. I love my neighborhood, the Near East Side of Madison, Wisconsin. I bought my house there in 1974, still live in the same house. And I'm still taking pictures of the same neighborhood. I've been doing it for 50 years. But my neighborhood tells a story to me. And these buildings that I take pictures of around the neighborhood, they tell stories to me too. They all have a spirit within them. And it's one I think that I really appreciate and enjoy having been able to capture. That a little bit doctored, the full moon over Atwood, but that, you know, it tells a story too. It tells a story too. And the Capitol, I couldn't get away with that. My landlord, I have an art gallery on Atwood Avenue. The picture you just saw was Bob Hanson, the owner of Mr. Roberts Bar and Grill. He's also very supportive. He rents a gallery space to me for $700 a month. You can't ask for more support than that. Lots of pictures of the Capitol because it's important to us. So I'm still on this journey of doing my neighborhood, but I think the common thread that I see now is I'm still, the thing I enjoy the most as a photographer is really being a documentary photographer. I have some books out on the table outside by the band that you can look at, and they're documentary photos. I'll let those who ride decide. There was a biker rally back in the 80s here that the president of the CC Riders promoted. He was also president of the Better Bikers of America. He put on this Let Those Who Ride Decide. It was an anti-helmet law rally. And I have great photos of that. So that was a documentary experience that I really enjoyed doing. I worked for various magazines. I worked for Underground Papers. I worked for Kaleidoscope, Takeover, all the little papers that we had here in Madison back in the early days. And that was my photojournalism again. The latest thing I've done is some images that should be coming up fairly soon, which I really loved. It was, I call it the State Street Walk. There's a book, again, out on the table you can take a look at if you care to. But basically what I did was, I've developed the style that you see in my photography. It's called HDR, High Dynamic Range. The technique is you do multiple photographs of the same image. You're supposed to put the camera on a tripod, make sure nothing's moving, and you take, I'm a street photographer. I never use a tripod. I just bang away. That's how you get these pictures. So there are multiple images made at different exposures. You blend them together, and you get this kind of, I hate to use the word, but kind of cartoony look. They're really bright, they're really saturated, and I love them. I really do. They to me look the way the scene that I was photographing looked to my eye. You know, when things came out of my camera, they always looked flat. I had to play with them a lot. So when I started doing HDR photography 15 years ago, I got excited about color, where I'd primarily been a black and white photographer up to that time. But my favorite project that I've done recently, I don't know how far it's going to be before we get there, but I'll talk to you about it a little bit. Using this high dynamic range as a street photographer, and trying to do art at the same time. I went downtown one afternoon during the George Floyd protests. Maybe I should wait till we get there in the slideshow. But there's really not much more I can say about the images we're looking at now. I think all of you, if you live around here, you can recognize a lot of the pictures. Aubrey Gardens, I'm not a flower photographer, but if you want to do pictures of flowers, boy, we live in a beautiful community for that with our gardens. I did an HDR photo for a company that asked me to do some employee photographs, so I did them HDR. I don't know what they thought about them, they bought them. Here we got Santa Claus going by the Capitol. That was fun to do. The King Club. I'm a musician also, so a lot of pictures that I do are of places where bands play, or music and that kind of thing. But getting back to the State Street Walk, and you'll see the pictures when they finally come up in the slideshow. Stormy Monday, I call that one. It's one of my favorite pictures. Some of these photos are vintage. We're going through, the picture you just saw was the old record shop and the old guitar shops on Atwood Avenue. They aren't there anymore. A lot of the images you see on display out in the hallway are buildings that I really love that aren't going to be there after this year. You know, our community's changing, and I feel really grateful that I've had an opportunity to do my thing with these old buildings that are so much a part of the Madison that I love. And I love this town. I think it's, like I said, I traveled all over the country, and I never really landed anywhere where I felt at home until I landed here. It's a fantabulous, it's not just the buildings. It's all you folks too. It's the people that live here. It's a really unique, wonderful, and creative community. I own an art gallery now. I went from my crate to an art gallery. And I've got 24 artists in there, and they all are from the east side of town. They're all incredibly talented, and they're just a drop in the bucket. Our community has so many creative people in it, so wonderfully expressive people, that I personally feel really blessed to be part of this town, Madison, Wisconsin. It's a wonderful place. Well, I talked long enough till we got to my State Street Walk, the George Floyd. I went down there one afternoon with my camera, just took one rock up the street and back down. No tripod, just taking multiple exposures with my camera. And one thing I really love about this, I call it my ephemeral series, because if you notice closely, you can see through people. You know, maybe they're moving, you see multiple images. And to me, that sort of is saying that they're surrounded by something that's going to be there for a while. Well, some of these old buildings are coming down, but still, we're kind of temporary. We're just moving through time and through space. And I think this technique kind of captures that. And I love it. And I especially, again, in our town, we had this bad experience. George Floyd, there was a lot of controversy about it. The city was worried that people were going to be busting windows out of businesses. So they paid 100 artists money to go down there and do all these murals. And I think it's a beautiful testament to Madison, where we turned, lemons into lemonade, I guess that's what they say, isn't it? So this is really my favorite project that I've done in the last few years. And hopefully it will be enduring. None of these images are in the show here. Like I said, I have an art gallery, 2118 Atwood Avenue, and there's a lot of images you can see there that you're not going to be able to see here. I also have an online website, talbotgallery2118.com. You can go and you can see all this stuff too. There, I made it through my presentation. Thank you very much. I want to say one last word. I really want to put out a big thanks to Bill Litton for creating this facility. It's so beautiful. It's wonderful. And Daniel brings people from all over the world to have shows here. And it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for Bill Linton. Thank you, Bill.
So did I mention thanks to Bill Linton? Oh, we got, yeah. Anyway, but thank you, Terry. Terry, that's great stuff. So last but not least is Louis Koch, and I've known him for a number of years and have tried to figure out how to get him in here, and it, COVID interrupted things, and just wasn't the right timing, and this just worked out really great. So I'm really proud to have Louis as part of this diverse group of photographers. So, but anyway, I will talk a little bit about him before he gets up, because he's reluctant to, sit down a little bit there. We'll get to you. Yeah. He's anxious. So anyway, but Louis's, his work draws upon aspects of photography, sculpture, assemblage, and text. And Louis Koch calls attention to the often unremarked upon elements of everyday life as seen in the connections of all things. Originally hailing from New York, Koch has called Madison, Wisconsin his home for decades. His work has been shown internationally and is in both private and museum collections. So he's kind of a big gun here in this little world of Madison. But you think about Madison, we've got some really famous people that are from here, and it's easy to overlook people like Louis. So I'm really proud to introduce Louis Koch.
Well, thanks for that beautiful introduction, Daniel, and for inviting me to be here with you all. It's great to see so many familiar faces, and wanted to begin by thanking both Daniel and Stephanie Shea, who've helped arrange this exhibit, and all the good people here at Promega, Bill Linton, not the least, of course. And it was really fascinating for me to hear both Eric and Terry talk about their work, because while our work is all rather different from one another, Eric talked about a sense of wonder, which is something that's always driven me in my work. Terry talks about being influenced by surrealist filmmakers, which is also a great influence for me. So it's really a pleasure to be showing with two other photographers who are doing something quite different, but we're following somewhat of the same path. This quote by John Muir: "When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything in the universe." That drives my photography more than just about anything. So, from this place, the title for this show. Just what is the place that it refers to? What this place means to me, in the context of my work, is something both local and distant. When people ask me what I like to photograph, I usually say rather simply and without irony, the world. It could be anything. A shadow, a gaze, a dream, the spaces in between. So what do I photograph? The world is my canvas. The photo you see here is from Cleaner Details, my slideshow of found text in the lobby. You can see it on 2 screens today. I think it'll be mostly on 1 screen, closer to the auditorium, after today. In any event, this photograph is actually, in a way, 2 photos, doubling the idea of photography. What you see initially is actually someone else's photograph, an anonymous photographer's work on the back of an RV. My photograph includes that image with the addition of a taillight and a piece of license plate. In the lower left, it's a photo within a photo, a visual pun. more of an idea than a document. And this is central to my thoughts about making photographs. Early on as a youngster, I, for years, expected to become an archaeologist. Later in college, I was a student of history. And in the decade or two which followed, I combined my passion for photography with history in documentary projects related to the culture, primarily of the upper Midwest. Photography was a kind of visual archaeology for me. But I strayed so far from the path of objective inquiry that the first show of my personal non-documentary photography was titled Documents, Demons, and Dreams. That was followed a little bit later by a show which I called Confessions of an Animist, and it went on from there, so on. You get the idea, but photography was for the pure pleasure of seeing what things look like photographed. I'm paraphrasing Gary Winogrand there, great photographer. In the gallery upstairs, I've mounted various of my large-scale photographic assemblages, which use disparate images as building blocks. Or you can think of them like jigsaw puzzle pieces, a narrative or rebus for the viewer to fill in the blanks. I'll briefly describe some of the assemblages. Most of them were made between 1986 and 2003. It was also a time when I was photographing a lot at night. As you'll see in some of the pictures, it was a time when dreams were seeping out from the sleeping houses onto the landscape. Thread of Life, the totem you see here, it's the first assemblage you'll encounter at the top of the stairs. And it's from my series of totems made in the 80s and 90s. It includes pictures from Budapest, Paris at the top, a detail from my wall diary at my studio, and in the center, an early selfie before selfies were a thing. This was not something that I ever thought of as a selfie at the time, but it was a picture that I made of myself. The camera was on a tripod, and that's my hand interjecting on the left. It was this totem, Thread of Life, semi-autobiographical in nature, also includes, and this is where the surrealists come in, a prose poem by Tristan Tzara, the great surrealist poet who wrote this text for Man Ray. It's called When Things Dream. And I've used it as a significant text in other works, but in this instance, it was my first use of text as image. Another assemblage that I've presented upstairs in Wisconsin from 1993 calls attention to our relative good fortune to be living in such a benign and tranquil landscape. Actually, this place. While in the meantime, the fires of war burn just over the horizon in all directions. Later, in 1998, I brought the project to the public sphere by mounting the images with place names updated on billboards in 8 Dane County locations. I'd like to gratefully acknowledge Adams Billboard Company for providing the space, donating the space actually for this project. Afghanistan, at a time before we were at war there was still a war taking place prior. Some years before our entering that war, Bosnia, Palestine, years before it came into American public consciousness, has been at war. And on and on. In a related vein, an elegiac work, "Oh Say Can You See," dates from 2008 and refers to the ever-present danger of terrorism, both foreign and domestic. In this case, specifically the 9/11 attacks and their aftermath. And this work is also in the upstairs gallery. On top of this diptych, dummy bombs at Truax Air Base in Madison. A church road sign from rural church in Tennessee. World War I monument in Brussels. The Statue of Liberty, the actual Statue of Liberty, in New York City Harbor. And a Roman statesman, portrait marble from the Glyptotek. Visitors to the World Trade Center site just days after the attack. And on the streets of New York at that same time, and flying into New York City just days after 9/11. Both documents and dreams. These photographs described an idea as metaphor. The world, this place, is my canvas. There's another totem on the left, slender thread totem, and on the right, Dream Portal, the Manifestations, which can be seen upstairs, a far more interior sort of work than the others that I've been describing. I made it in 1992 when I was a new father, and I consider it a meditation on the life cycle, seen from a perhaps more Western point of view. Rather than a cycle or a wheel, when we talk about the life cycle, this is a diurnal arc, like the rising and setting of the sun, or perhaps life seen as a doorway we pass through. Dream Portal includes photographs of friends and my son and a concluding shadow self in the lower right, a hydro self. This photograph is in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum. And these chairs, which could be from Waiting for Godot, but they're not. In any event, continuing in a somewhat political vein, using the term broadly, this work, I don't intend to tell people what to think. Rather, I'd like to suggest things that I'm thinking about and that are worthy of attention. Amnesioid, which contemplates genocide. This is now in the collection of the Chazen from 1987. And also from that same time, Blind Justice, the Supreme Court, Roman portrait marbles, arrayed around a cross of television in a small motel room. The scenes from All the King's Men, the great novel by Robert Penn Warren. And surplus koan totem in the collection of the Milwaukee Art Museum, specifically because of the base image. The feet are Abraham Lincoln's, the statue in front of the Milwaukee Art Museum. Moving closer to the present, my exploration of what I call found text, the quotidian and eccentric voices murmuring throughout the landscape, and the idea of photography, interrogating just what is a photograph. Is it real? And what is the role photography plays in our lives? In the introduction to my book, Touchless Automatic Wonder, Found Text Photographs from the Real World, I wrote the preamble, something of a manifesto, which speaks to these concerns. And if you'll allow me, I'll just read a couple of paragraphs from that. Photographs remain as a residue of memory. They are fragments of experience, conjecture, and awe, a sometimes deliberate, sometimes accidental account of one's life. In some ways, they actually are memory. I often think of photographs as my paper memory. And I like seeing things, and I like words. There's something revelatory about the two together, an almost Pentecostal feeling of seeing in tongues. Signs and symbols and scraps of text are ubiquitous in our daily lives and can be read like dreams for their various meanings, or they can be accepted more poetically as unfathomable koans. I prefer to read them as both, like the photographs in this book. And following are a few page spreads from the book, which was published in 2009. By the way, signed copies are available out in the lobby if you're curious to see it. And there are photographs from Tomahawk, Wisconsin, some photographs from North India, a postcard seller in Paris, a signboard in Mount Horeb, and the Tristan Tzara text, again, placed in conjunction with this curious signboard. Which brings us to the present day. Cleaner Details, which, as I said, is out in the lobby. It's an extended narrative of new color work, found text in color, and it's shown in a continuous loop on the flat screen. It includes a variety of images, a wide variety of images actually, and this from New York, it says photography but in reverse, cuneiform tablet from the ancient Sumer civilization and actually the world's first example of writing. Unintended art, perhaps, from a Belgian museum. A couple of photographs from New York City. A torn poster, a found collage from Austria. And again in New York, I don't think any comment is necessary on this. And so on. So yes, the world is my canvas. These pictures come from anywhere and everywhere. And also, they come from this place, Hollandale, to be exact, just south of Mount Horeb. Thank you for your interest, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts, any questions or answers that you might have. And I'll conclude with this favorite quote by Henry Thoreau. The question is not what you look at, but what you see. Thank you.
I create imagery using 19th century techniques that really range from 1851 to 1880. Those historical techniques that were used in that period of time, I make by hand by mixing chemicals and putting them on either a metal plate or a glass plate. And I also make the photographs by hand using historic 19th century, they're called POP, or printing out processes, that require the light-sensitive material to be in direct contact with the negative. The light changes. There's no way to meter with a light meter to your exposure with a blue-sensitive plate because the meter is reading green and red. So you have to do it by experience, by feel. To me, it's physical. The physicality of the image is really a representation of the actual energy transfer. And these processes are so physical that the resulting image is, you can sense it, you can feel it. So the history and how they're made is really is what continues to fascinate me. They're blue sensitive, so they also see a different form of light. While they don't see red or green, they also perceive UV light, which we don't see. There's no dot, there's no pixel. It's literally a transfer of energy. And so that interaction and sense of wonder, that feeling that darkroom work provides, like shooting film, you kind of not sure what you're gonna get until you make it, is a profound exercise that it really teaches you something about yourself.
I'm primarily a documentary street photographer, and it's pretty much happenstance. You know, what I come across, I take a picture of. Something that captures my eye, captures my imagination, I take a picture of. That's my documentary photography. The other stream I follow is, I kind of call it my more fine art photography, the black and white stuff. And I think I've been influenced by Freudian dream imagery. So those images come from somewhere within myself. And I'll construct a scenario and take a picture of it. But it all happens very quickly, and it's a collaboration because there are always people in it. A lot of times it's naked women. I seem to have this psychological, deep Freudian thing about naked women and scenarios. But it's really speaking to something bigger than eroticism or that kind of thing. It's really to me, very substantial about what the real world is really about. And to me, the real world isn't the one that we necessarily look at, but it's the one that we live in within ourselves. It's more of a spiritual kind of approach to photography. It's always a collaboration. And sometimes it's a collaboration with the models that are in my photography or the buildings or whatnot. But it's also, I think, a collaboration with the universe. The universe brings things to me and I take a picture of it. It's, it's kind of magical, and I really feel that way. The HDR photography I started doing when I switched from primarily doing black and white imaging to color. I was never satisfied with color. It just looked flat to me. It didn't look like it looked to my eye when I looked out at the scene. So I played around and I came up with this HDR approach. It's multiple images. Some are overexposed, some are underexposed, some are on the button. And they're blended together in a special software program. And it comes out looking the way it looks to my eye. Nowadays I do a lot of pictures of buildings, but it's not that much different from when I did pictures of scenarios with people. Those are capturing images that float in front of my lens. I just capture things I see through the lens. And again, that's different than my psychological, I call them psychodramas. These buildings, how they have a spirit and how they really are alive to me, and they have so much history and so many stories. And they are vibrant, they're alive, and they're bright and they're beautiful. And I portray them that way.